Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited because today I actually have enough books that I read in the month of May to actually do a May reading wrap up. I read 10 books in the month of May, and prior to that I had only read 11 books beginning of this year to the end of May. So I almost doubled I almost like matched what I'd read the year in the month of May, which just makes me so excited. I'm so excited to be picking up books and reading again. I feel like reinvigorated. I do feel like I might be feeling a little over many of the books that I previously owned, or the books on my physical TBR entering 2023. I recently posted a books that I've purchased so far this year, and I've been excited to read some of the books that I've purchased. But I am going to set a goal for myself going forward, although I have been purchasing more books on Amazon and setting them aside to do like a book unhaul. But I think as of today is June 1st that I'm filming this. I think as of June 1st, I need to read at least 5 books off of my monthly TBR in order to earn back buying 4 books, so that we're bringing in less than we're reading. Does that make sense? Anyway, only 2 of the books that I have read in the month of May were off of my like physical TBR leading into this year. I read 5 books that I purchased this year, like that were on my physical TBR, and then I had 3 books that I listened to on audiobook that I don't physically have, either that or I read them on Kindle. So if you're interested in the 10 books that I read in the month of May, as well as my thoughts on them, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel, I would love if you would consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's get into this reading wrap up. I will leave linked down below the number of books that I have physically read off of my TBR leading into this year, which I believe is 5. My goal was to read 24 before I purchased any books this year, but now let's just hope that I read 24 off of that list before the end of the year. That is not including books that I purchased this year and have read. So first book that I read in the month of May was Killer Instinct by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the 2nd book in the Natural series, and I accredit this series to getting me out of my reading slump. This is a YA, maybe like mystery thriller sort of series. Essentially, we are following 5 teenagers that have these like natural abilities that, you know, not your everyday, not your average Joe Schmo would have, and they've been recruited by the FBI to help solve cold cases. So one of them is like really good at math, statistics, like all this stuff going on in her brain. One of them is really good at detecting lies. 2 of them are profilers, and then one of them is really good at like reading faces. And what I really like about this series is it's connected as a series, but every single book kind of follows like one story, and then that story kind of gets wrapped up. But the 2nd book, you're kind of like continuing on with one of the like what I assume will be like an overarching kind of like story of the series. And it's just really fun, really fast-paced, short chapters. I really love the characters. I feel like the found family grew in the 2nd book, and I'm just find myself connected even more to these characters. And I have been really into like a serial killer book / situation. So anything that has to do with like true crime, with like crime and serial killers, I've really been enjoying. So I really enjoyed Killer Instinct. I believe I did rate this book a 4.25. I enjoyed this one a little bit more than the first book in the series. I feel like this is gonna be like, I'm gonna rate each of the books in the series like under 5 stars, but overall it's gonna be like a 5-star series in my mind. You guys, does that ever happen to you? Anyway, 4.25 for this. I really, really enjoyed this one. All right, then I went on to read Happy Place by Emily Henry. My friends and I talked about starting a book club. We talked about this last November, and then we were all gonna get together in January and talk about Happy Place. We didn't do that because none of us had read the book, and then slowly but surely, like every time we would get together the last few months, one or more of us would have like completed the book, and I feel like I was the last friend to finish the book, but no one really had great things to say out of my friend group about this book, and I feel like I've heard such mixed things about this book. I also wasn't a huge fan of Emily Henry's beach read, and then I also read People We Meet on Vacation, but I read that back in like 2020, maybe 2021, and I remember like liking that book but not being like this is the best book ever. So I was a little bit nervous going into this. I did end up rating this a 3 stars. I liked this, but I didn't love it. And I don't know, I feel like you either like really connect to Emily Henry's writing and she's like your favorite author ever, or like you just get a little bit bored by her writing sometimes. And I just felt a little bit bored at times, and maybe that's just a me problem. So in this book, you are following a group of friends, and this group of friends, I believe, met in college. And this is where I'm like, I know it wasn't a 5 star because like the details are a little fuzzy. But I think one of the friends' parents has this cottage up in Maine, and every single summer these friends would go to this cottage together, and it is a number of years later and they are actually selling the cottage. So they all decide to get together for one last like hoorah basically. And the point of views you're following in this is Harriet and Wynne. They are or were engaged, and their friends still think they are engaged, but what they don't know is that Harriet and Wynne have separated, but they don't want to ruin the weekend. They don't want to ruin like the specialness of what this weekend is supposed to be. Specialness, not a word. So they basically have to pretend that they're still together, and you kind of like uncover some reasons like why each character kind of is how they are. The vibes are right for the summer. Like the vibes are there. And I will say, I feel like if I reread this book, I might have even more appreciation for it, but I just grew a little bit bored at times, and I didn't quite connect to the characters enough to make this more than a 3 star for me. I thought that the way that the story wrapped up was really cute, and I think this, sometimes I'm like, I feel like I just am not the target audience for like a really deep message. Like I just want my reading to be entertaining and fun. And there definitely sends like a message. There's a message in this book of just kind of like what happens to your friendships as you grow and get older. And I've definitely noticed that in my friendships. And so I feel like if I were to reread this, maybe in a different mindset of like wanting to like appreciate it for that deeper message, maybe I would like this book better. But for me, this was just a 3 star on first read. Okay, it did make me want to go on and read her newest book though. Funny story. It could be the Cobalt Blue. Like clearly we like blue. Clearly we like a blue. But this, I was like, you know what? I'm on an Emily Henry streak. And by streak, I mean I've read 1 book. We could make it a streak and read a 2nd book. So I decided to pick up Funny Story, her newest release. And I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. In this book, we're following Daphne and Miles, and at the beginning of the book, you find out that Daphne's fiance leaves her for his best friend, basically his childhood best friend. He goes out on his bachelor party, or to his bachelor party. His childhood best friend, I forget her name, is there along for the ride, and then he comes home from his bachelor party and is basically like, I am in love with, I feel like her name starts with a P. Priscilla is like what I want to say, but I could be very wrong. Why am I thinking that? Petra is her name. He is basically like, me and Petra are going to get married. Me and Petra love each other and I can't marry you. And you also need to move out. Well, she is a librarian and can't afford to like just move out on her own. So she needs a roommate, and in comes Miles, who was Petra's boyfriend, but obviously Petra left Miles to be with Daphne's ex-fiance now, who I think his name was Peter. I could be wrong. And so Miles and Daphne end up moving in together. And what I loved about this book, there were so many just like laugh out loud moments for me. It was just cute. It was sweet. And Miles was not your like everyday male main character heroine or hero. Everyday male main character hero. He was a little bit quirky. He was like a bit of a pothead, at least at the beginning of the book. It wasn't like he was like this super successful billionaire. He wasn't described as like having an 8-pack of abs, but he was just quirky and funny and cute and just so sweet. I felt like, and I really connected to him and Daphne's. I just really liked them as a couple, and I thought this was a really fun one to read. It wasn't a 5-star for me, but it was a 4-star. This is my highest rated Emily Henry book, so hopefully she keeps going with what she put into this book. Okay, then I read my first 5-star of the year. I actually believe I gave Say You Swear 5 stars at the beginning of this year, but as I reflect, I don't think that that's actually a 5-star. I would say maybe like a 4.25. But Abby Jimenez's Part of Your World, I am kicking myself for waiting so long to read this book. I ate this up. I literally read this within a 24-hour period of time, and I freaking loved this book. Abby Jimenez is from Minnesota, and so the little like Easter eggs of just like Minnesota things, like they mentioned Rochester, which is where I grew up, and just other like Minnesotan things, I was like living for those moments. But in this book, you are following Daniel and Alexis, and Alexis basically gets a flat tire. I think it's a flat tire. Something happens with her car on her drive home from, I think, somewhere in Iowa. I can't remember. She may have been at a funeral. Regardless, Daniel ends up like getting her car going again, and she is like driving, and she decides to stop at a bar. I can't remember if it was like a VFW. I feel like it was. Like that's the vibe it's giving if it wasn't an actual VFW. And then she runs into Daniel there, and what you find out is that Daniel and his friends have this bet going to see if they can basically like pick Alexis up. I don't think his friends know that he like helped her fix her flat tire or whatever was wrong with her car. Daniel ends up going up to Alexis, telling her about this bet, and then she's like, oh, well, why don't we leave together and then we can split the winnings from the bet. They do this, and then you find out that Alexis actually indeed goes home with Daniel, and they hook up. There is a bit of an age gap. I can't remember exactly how many years, at least 8 years. Alexis is older, he is younger. And you find out that he is from this small town where everyone kind of helps each other out. She is working as a doctor somewhere, I think in Minneapolis, somewhere in like the metro area, and so she comes to visit him from time to time, but there is about a 2.5 hour commute for them. So she basically is like a weekend booty call, but like Daniel is her booty call, and it's so sweet and wholesome and just like them falling in love. You also find out that Alexis is, or like was in a relationship with someone who's like really crappy. Yes, they were in a relationship, but they're getting out of that relationship, or aren't in the relationship anymore. And there's just a deeper level of connection. I loved both Daniel and Alexis so much. I ate up every moment of them together. The romance was so sweet and so cute, but there is this like deeper level of emotions with this book. I wish this book was twice as long. I would have continued to read about them. I loved this book so freaking much. I highly recommend Part of Your World. Okay, then I listened to The Villa by Rachel Hawkins, and I ended up giving this 3 stars. It was a really quick listen. I think I listened to it in like 2 days. And in this book, you are following, oh my gosh, can I even remember? You're following an author. She's in a bit of a writing slump. Her husband just left her, and then she like basically, I think, goes to a cafe to meet up with like her childhood best friend, who's this really successful author, and she basically like pitches this idea that they go stay at this villa in Italy for like 6 weeks together to like work on, they're both authors, so to work on their books together. But the villa that they're going to, there was a famous like murder there years ago, and basically you're like uncovering stuff about their murder. I don't know, it was interesting. I definitely didn't really care about like it was past and present timelines, so you're like learning about like what was happening to, like there was a famous band at the time, they were staying at this villa, and then someone gets murdered. You're like past and present timeline learning about the band, what was happening at the time. It was very, very messy, very kind of like sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and I just like didn't really care for the past timeline. I was kind of here for the present timeline, but then like not enough to really rate it higher than 3 stars. It was a fun, quick listen, but definitely not something that like I would care to reread or even re-listen to. So that was that. Then I listened to The Girls I've Been by Tess Sharp, and I really loved this. I gave this 4.5 stars. It wasn't quite a 5-star, but in this book, the opening like chapter, there are these teenagers, 3 teenagers that are basically caught up in a bank robbery or a bank heist sort of situation. And what you learn about the female main character, who her name is of course escaping me right now, is she basically was brought up by her mother to be a con artist. Her mother is a con artist, and so she helped her mom in these cons. And this again is kind of like past and present timeline, and she's basically using her past con artist days to help her and her friends basically make it out of this bank robbery situation alive. And it was so entertaining, so fun, so fast paced. I was literally so excited to commute to work every day so that I could listen to it. I was so excited to take my walk so that I could listen to it. I would choose like listening to this in my bath over reading in the bath, which usually I read in my bath. And it was so entertaining. I feel like if you're in a reading slump, this would be a really good book to read because it was really fast paced, really short chapters, like whether you read this or listen to it, which by the way, the audiobook I believe is read by the actual author of the book. So that was also, I just felt like fun because you kind of like, I feel like an author is going to like read her work in the exact tone that she meant for it to be taken in. So I loved this. There is a second book in this series and I have downloaded that and plan to listen to that this coming month as well. I love that one. Could not recommend that enough. I feel like any type of reader would like this book. It was so entertaining. All right, then I picked up Wild Love by Elsie Silver. I was so excited for her new series. And this I believe is going to be I don't know if it's going to be a billionaire series or if it's just a Rosewood Hill series. But this book specifically, you're following a billionaire. I also think it might be like all books will be like single dad trope. So in this book, you are following Ford Grant, who you find out is this Forbes nominated sexiest billionaire right in like the beginning of the book. And he has a past with Rosie, who comes back to Rose Hill, which is where the book is set in. It's Rose Hill, right? I think it is. Rosie basically has something happen to her at the workplace that causes her to come back home. She doesn't want to go back to the workplace and Ford ends up hiring her. But what you learn about these two is that they basically have like a, Rosie is Ford's best friend's sister, and growing up they were in this town every single summer. They got together and Ford and Rosie had this relationship where they were friends, but also like they would like pick on each other and tease each other all the time. And obviously they both had a crush on one another. And that's really kind of like what the story like follows. In the first parts of the book, you also find out that Ford basically to make $100 to be able to buy a concert ticket back in the day, donated sperm, and he has a long lost daughter that he didn't know about that comes to live with him, which that's really not a spoiler, I don't think. No, it's not. It says it literally on the back of the book. I really liked Ford's relationship with his daughter and Rosie's relationship with his daughter more than I enjoyed Rosie and Ford's relationship. I found Rosie to be a little bit annoying at times, and I liked Ford, but also like, I just didn't 100% connect to the characters, and I didn't 100% connect to their romance. Like, it felt very much like they were just attracted to each other and didn't necessarily like off the bat at least know each other on like this deeper level. And like, yes, over time they like learned things about, I don't know. There was something that felt just a little bit not 100% there about their relationship. And so I ended up giving this a 4 stars. Yeah, it would be a 4. I'm like, would it be more like a 3.75? No, it's a 4 star. I was expecting this to be a 5 star. So I think like the entire time that I really enjoyed the first like third of the book, and then it really started to just kind of like drag out and feel really long. I just didn't feel as connected to the characters, and I was kind of waiting for that moment to happen towards the end that I felt like it became a 5 star in my mind, and it just never did. So for me, it's a 4 star. I'm still very excited for the next book. I'm hoping it follows Rosie's brother. I think if I'm remembering correctly, his name is West. I would love to follow his story. So I still will continue on in this series, but I was a little bit disappointed by this. I definitely liked all of the Chestnut Springs books better than this. So personally hoping she brings a little bit more connection to the next book, but we'll continue on in the series. All right, and then next I read Bad Summer People, and I will have an upcoming like reading summer books vlog where I read this book. So I'm not gonna go too in depth on this, but I freaking loved this book. It is currently on Kindle Unlimited, and I was reading it on Kindle Unlimited, but I decided to buy a physical copy of this because 1, I definitely want my friends and family to read this. 2, I can see myself wanting to recommend this in videos to come. 3, I can see myself wanting to reread this every summer. If you like Bravo TV, if you are like a housewives girly, if you love Vanderpump Rules, if you like just like peering in on other people's messy rich people drama, this book is for you. In this book, we are not really following one character, we're following a number of characters. And the one complaint I will say I have about this book is I felt like I was a little bit confused, like there was almost just like too many characters and I was getting confused by some of the characters. But you're kind of getting every single character's perspective in here. They're all rich socialites. Think of the 1%ers, and they all go to this island. Think of like a Hamptons-like island, but it's not the Hamptons. They all go to this island for the summer. And it's just, you're following all of this drama. At the beginning of the book, you find out that a body is found, and it's at the end of the summer that the body is found. There's a tennis tournament that's happening, and it's just like, there's not really a plot. Like, you're literally just like getting a picture into like these people's lives, but it's so messy, so dramatic. Lots of like infidelity happening, but it's just so entertaining. It's like a satire on like the rich 1%, like the rich socialites. So if that does not sound like your cup of tea, I don't think this book is going to be for everyone. But if you want just a mindless, entertaining book that's like Bravo TV to just like sit by the pool and read, couldn't recommend this book enough. If I didn't say, I gave that one 4.5 stars. The second to last book I read this past month was Abby Jimenez's Yours Truly. And I loved this, but not quite as much as I loved Part of Your World. I feel like that's an unpopular opinion. I feel like this is everybody's favorite book. And I did like this book. I gave it a 4.5, but I will say I didn't connect quite as much to Jacob and I think it's Emma as I did to Daniel and Alexis in Part of Your World. I do think the anxiety representation, especially on Jacob's end in this book, is like top notch. And it wasn't really that, it was just, and I did listen to part of this on audiobook, and I feel like the narrator for Daniel did a really good job, or sorry, for Jacob, did a really good job of like kind of speaking in like a monotone, anxious voice. But there was something about that I think maybe took away from the story. I think if I actually just read this book 100% and kind of like got to create the tone in my own head, maybe I would feel differently about this. But there was just a little bit of something missing from the connection from these two characters. So in this book, you are following Brianna, sorry, not Emma. You are following Brianna and Jacob, and they work at the same hospital. Jacob essentially starts working at this hospital. Nobody really likes him. I think on his first day of work, he didn't kill. 6 people like came into the emergency room, were under his watch, and died. So like he just doesn't get off on the right foot. He also is extremely anxious. He has social anxiety, so like he just struggles with social interaction, and therefore I think rubs people the wrong way. He also rubs our female main character Brianna in the wrong way at the beginning, but she runs into him and she like breaks his phone. And I can't exactly remember when they started writing letters to one another, but they started to write like handwritten notes to one another. And their relationship was really sweet and wholesome. Jacob's fiance essentially leaves him, and then Jacob's brother and Jacob's ex-fiance get together and they are set to get married. And Jacob's family is basically trying to like look to Jacob to see if he's truly okay with it. And so he feels like the only way to convince his family he's okay with this is to say that he has another girlfriend. So he lies to his family, says he has another girlfriend because he doesn't want to like, he just wants his ex-fiance and his brother to be happy. But then there's like all these upcoming events for the wedding that Jacob's family expects him to bring a girlfriend to. You find out some more about Brianna's past, like backstory, things with her brother, things Jacob's doing to help her brother. And so basically Brianna owes Jacob a favor, and he asks her if she will be his fake girlfriend. And their relationship just forms from there. And it is really sweet, really wholesome, and really cute, but there was just something missing that just didn't make it feel like a 5-star to me. So 4.5, 4.75. I still loved this. I loved the little Minnesota references and Easter eggs, and I would highly recommend this to anyone, especially if you're a romance lover. Again, there's the aspect of romance, but then there's this aspect of like a heavier topic happening, and it is a heavy topic in this book. So I really enjoyed this, was really entertained, couldn't recommend this enough, read this really quickly, and That was the 9th book that I read this month. All right, and then the 10th book I listened to this month, and it was also by Emma Rosenblum, and she recently released a new book, and it was called Very Bad Company, and I listened to that one, and I'm glad that I listened to that one. I don't think I'll end up purchasing that one. I will say I liked Bad Summer People better, but after I've had time to just like sit for a few days and digest Very Bad Company, I also really enjoyed that book. I was like, I listened to that book in like 48 hours or less. It was really fast, short, fast-paced. You wanted to know what was happening, but the thing that held me back most from that book was one of the characters. So this book is about, I think, kind of like a satire again, on like the 1% or on like top tech level executives, and they go on this retreat to Miami. One of their own ends up missing, and they're also set to basically sell their tech company to a higher tech company, and they really need to do this because they have been lying a little bit about like what they do. Like there's a mystery aspect to it too. It was so messy, and really like none of these characters were likable. I feel it, except for one. I did really like Deborah, the HR lady. In this book, you're also following the perspective of multiple characters. I think you get the perspective of all like 7 of the executives that are on this retreat. But in Bad Summer People, there were like a couple of characters that like, I was like, okay, like you're not the best person, but I'm also like kind of rooting for you. Like, I think you should leave your husband. But in this book, I just like really couldn't root for anyone. And the author did such a good job of making the CEO of this company just seem so disgusting and such a slimy person. And I just like almost couldn't handle it. Like, he gave me the biggest ick. And she really, like, she nailed it for making you, like, probably think of him like mini tech CEOs. But that also kind of, like, held me back from, like, truly loving the book. I think I would give this a 4 stars. I'm, like, between a 4 and a 4.25. Super entertaining, short, fast-paced. Not going to be for everyone. Again, if you like Bravo TV, I think you'll really like this. Although it doesn't quite give that Housewives sort of feel because it's like about these tech executives, but it was still messy, it was still entertaining and still fun, just not quite as good for me as Bad Summer People. But that was the 10th and final book that I read in the month of May. I'm already so excited about all the books that I plan to read in the month of June, and I cannot wait to wrap up June with you. I can wait because I don't want June to be over, but I'm very excited to continue reading. Let me know what your favorite book was you read this month, and maybe a book that you didn't so much love. Let a girl know what she should avoid in the comments below. Other than that, thank you so much for sticking around to watch today's video and for supporting me and my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.